Yeah, we're going to get nerdy today. So people that are watching, we're going to go down the rabbit hole specifically about HCPs and leveraging NPI numbers and also billing codes. And the reason we're coming up with this topic is our first LinkedIn Live session. We went through a lot of trends that are happening for 2024, a lot of digital trends, a lot of video trends too. But on the digital front, we had a lot of questions that came up afterwards, right? And so we want to unpack a lot of those questions that surfaced afterwards. Then, as Sean and I were kind of like figuring out all these questions and what's going to probably happen, full disclosure, is we're going to have two different sessions, LinkedIn Live sessions. There's so much to unpack. So we're definitely going to do two separate live sessions. And we're going to cover about 7 to 8 questions today's session. We're going to go pretty deep and pretty nerdy, but it's going to be a lot of great information. Again, these are a lot of the questions that came up from the last LinkedIn Live. And if you haven't seen the first LinkedIn Live that goes through the 2024 trends for digital and video, we're going to drop a link in the comment section. Duvani, one of our marketing specialists, is going to drop that link into it. So obviously, after you watch this one, if you want to go back and watch that first LinkedIn Live about a lot of initiatives and a lot of strategies that are happening for 2024 to reach and engage HCPs, that's definitely something to check out. And specifically, a lot of these questions around data and the NPI numbers, we're going to get into, hey, is the data accurate? Is it safe? Is using the data like legal, right? So we got some of those kind of questions. But what I wanted to do is kind of level set and specifically get into, at a high level, I want to take just a few minutes to walk the audience through how the one-to-one HCP targeting works using these NPI numbers. And then obviously we're going to spend a bulk of the time, Sean, our data guy, going through a lot of the questions that came up from obviously the last LinkedIn Live. And so essentially how it works is every HCP has to have a unique identifier. That unique identifier is an NPI number, also known as a national provider identifier number. So they have to use this for financial transactions. And so, again, Sean's going to get into the database, how you can leverage it. What we're doing is we're helping bridge the gap with our clients to be able to take that data and reach a variety of different HCPs. So whether you're trying to target a pathologist, urologist, dermatologist, medical oncologist, really any niche HCP out there, as long as they have that NPI number, we can reach them. And this is how it works. So basically, let's say, for example, it's a medical oncologist. It doesn't have to be medical oncology. Again, can be any niche HCP. We're just doing a lot of planning right now for some major oncology conferences coming up, AACR, and then also ASCO. So that's why I'm using medical oncologist as an example. But essentially, as they visit a website that uses their email address, it's a logged in experience. So one of our data providers is actually a healthcare recruiter. So they help bridge that gap, as I was mentioning. Once that niche HCP comes online, it's a login experience. We know that they're online, so we can start targeting them with your ad. And these are display ads, they're programmatic ads, and Sean's going to get into a lot of it. But essentially, we're able to track them. And then just as you and I navigate online, right? So think about our normal consumption of media. So if you're going to news, sports, weather, finance, travel, any of those types of sites, we're able to showcase specifically your message, your solution directly to that niche HCP. The goal obviously is to target them with a certain message, but then also what we want to be able to do is drive them ultimately to your website, right? So a lot of times we're developing either landing pages or we're driving them to a product page specifically on your website to learn more about your solution, learn more about your test. Once we drive them to that landing page or website for the campaign, we want to continue to re-engage them. So typically, most of these campaigns are, 95% of these campaigns that we're setting up, there's retargeting, right? So we want to showcase your ad. We want to drive them back to your website. The way we're actually doing this is some clients come to us, they have a database. Maybe they've got a database of medical oncologists already. In this example, again, we can reach any niche HCP. Some clients are coming to us saying, hey, we've got clients already. We've got customers that are ordering from us. And yes, we can actually scrub that list. That's one of the strategic things that we can do, is collaborate with our clients to understand, hey, if you have a list of customers that you're already using, we can scrub that list out. Or a unique opportunity would be to increase, specifically, let's say you wanted to increase test volume. Maybe a certain select audience just isn't ordering the test. Well, that's a great way where we can essentially create a different campaign, a different messaging campaign to resonate with that audience. So just as an example, one of the questions that came up last time is, well, how many providers are in the database for NPI? And this is just a very small sampling of medical oncologists and oncologists. So for example, as I was mentioning, we're putting a lot of strategic plans together for clients for AACR and ASCO. And so these are the latest numbers. So if you're looking to target, let's say, medical oncologist, we've got just over 6,600. If you're looking to just target general oncologists, there's about 36,000 that we're able to reach. And again, just high level, here's how it works. So let's say you're a medical oncologist, you're navigating online. So these are some of the usual websites that we're typically showing ads on. So think of it again as news, sports, weather, travel, finance, these lifestyle sites. So Fortune, New York Times, and this is just a very small sampling, right? There's thousands of websites. And when we do programmatic, it's basically covering most of those websites. And then the great thing about this type of targeting is it's cross-device. So we may start on the mobile device, but then essentially it's smart technology where we can hit their tablet, their mobile phone, their desktop. So it's definitely a great way to increase that frequency going across, obviously, multiple screens. Because Sean, I don't know about you, but I toggle about 4 different devices throughout the day. And, this is one of these things where it's digital. So we can optimize, right? So if we need to change audiences, if we need to look at the landing page, if we need to look at the different creative, right? That's the great thing about this, is it's digital. So there's some great ways that we can optimize. And as I was mentioning, all of our campaigns, we want to make sure we're driving traffic to the landing page, to the website, doing the retargeting. We're all familiar with retargeting, right? And then essentially, we want to get into a campaign action plan and then reporting. Sean's going to get into that in a moment, but I wanted to pivot, Sean, and want to get into specifically the myth busting, right, for billing codes and NPI numbers. And so I wanted to tee up some questions for you, and we want to go down the rabbit hole. So let's start off with a high level question that came through from that first LinkedIn Live. A lot of people aren't familiar with the data, right, and how you can leverage it. So we wanted to give some examples of other data and how, this may be more consumer orientated, but I think it'll get people up to speed and what sort of data is already being used and how data providers are targeting audiences digitally. And so, Sean, why don't you walk us through a couple of examples of other types of data that it's being used to reach consumers today?
As we know in digital marketing, there's just a lot of data that can be used to target. And likewise, there's a lot of platforms out there that are collecting data about our behaviors and our interests. And it's simple things like our credit card information. That is being collected. Credit bureau agencies are using that and selling that data really to some of the marketers. And that data has been used for many years. Back when we did snail mail, right? You could purchase the data for your demographic that you wanted to reach. And so likewise, hyperdrive to today in digital marketing, you can imagine how we might be able to target people. So there's homeowner data. So anytime you get a loan or purchase a home like that, or apply for a loan, even like that information is put out there about you. There's DMV data. So governmental data that is actually shared and used out there as well. And basically any platform that you might use that feels like it's free, is basically collecting data. Like that's one of their methods of making money so that they can have the platform. So, that's the social networks, that's email that most of us use. LinkedIn, it's free to all of us. It's not free if you want to post an ad, if you're recruiting, but, they also make money in the advertising that's put there, and that data is available to us as marketers.
Yeah, that's great, Sean. One of the other ones I wanted to mention here too, and we talked about it ahead of time, but when you go to the grocery store, right, all of a sudden you're buying certain items, milk, eggs, yogurt, whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden, the following week you get that coupon for the same items, right? And that's been going on for years, and that's data. They're leveraging it, they're monetizing it. And I think that's the simplest form, right, of how they can leverage it. So specifically for that NPI database, Sean, so can anybody download it? How does it work?
So the NPI database is publicly available information, and it's required, as I think you mentioned earlier, by anyone who is licensed to practice medicine in the United States, and it's used for Medicare and Medicaid to validate the licensure and specialty of doctors and their practices. So anyone can go there. It's a public database. We can share the link to that. You can look up your own doctor, for example, and you'll see their accreditation, their license information, and where they practice medicine, where they're licensed to practice medicine, in what state, and perhaps a hospital affiliation as well. So all of that is available. And technically, yes, anyone can download that database. But as you might imagine, it's pretty large, and so it's not an Excel file that you would just open and kind of look into. But it is publicly available information, and so we're able to use that, and then through purchase. So we consider that first party data. And that data can come from that database, where we can filter to, in your example earlier, medical oncologists or a urologist, or we can also filter that by billing code as well. So if there is a particular billing or procedural code that is applicable to your test or your device, we can filter down and get that list of NPIs. And we can also filter it for your customers. So if you have a list of customers, we can segment that data and segment it to provide either a different message, to exclude them from the campaign, or boost them from the campaign, or it could just be for metrics. Like maybe you want to see, are my customers interacting more with the ads than other general audience that perhaps isn't ordering my test or using my device. And so we can use that to target and segment as well. So we can help you build that list if you don't already have it. We can take a list if you already have it, and then we can build up a program on how to target them. So we use that as first party data, and then we couple it with third party data. So data that allows us to understand where those people are online. Right. So when they're navigating the news or reading their email on AOL or going to Yahoo or going to Fortune or wherever they might be going, it's data that allows us to essentially connect those two dots together so that we can serve the ad to those people. So this is an interesting concept because, in the world of consumer marketing, this isn't totally new. Right. There's all kinds of segments out there. I mean, probably over 1,000 segments on how you can target in the consumer world for interests or behaviors and lifestyle type situations where you can target them. So we wanted to find a solution to be able to target for our customers in the biotech and life science space, right? And so this was a way that we were able to do it, where it's less general. It's not just medical professionals or people interested in medical terminology or medical things, and getting much more specific about who we target so that we can be efficient with the spend that we're using for our clients.
Awesome. Sean, apologize. I forgot to change your title on this slide here. I didn't put a data guy, right? So I just put your name. So we're definitely getting nerdy about the data here. And specifically for the NPI list, I know Duvani, our marketing specialist, dropped that link in the comment section for the stream here. So as we were mentioning, if you're watching right now live, feel free to click on that. The other thing that spurred up that we didn't talk about, but I wanted to mention this too, is some clients have databases that they're already using on a regular basis for sales prospecting, a la Definitive Healthcare.
Mhm.
So this is kind of a side question, but I know you can answer it, Sean. If you're a subscriber, if a client has that database for definitive healthcare, and I think there's some other ones too that I'm probably leaving out, but and they have the NPI numbers, right? And you don't need to go to this database to download it. How are we working with clients if they have a definitive healthcare?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely a plug for Definitive Healthcare. They have a very comprehensive, great database that allows you as a consumer or as a marketer to really filter to the audience that you're wanting to address. And they keep their data really fresh as well. So you can refresh those lists based on the billing codes, procedural codes, and other types of filters that are available there. And so essentially, yes, we can ingest that data. It's considered, again, first party data. So to keep it, privacy intact, all we need is the NPI number. So really any tool that could be utilized. So whether that's your internal system that is collecting that information based on billing that might be happening behind the scenes, or from another data provider, as long as you've got that NPI number, we can utilize that to market.
Great. One way I'm helping describe this to our clients and people that aren't understanding NPI numbers is this is kind of a lead gen tactic. And the reason I say that is because at the end of these campaigns or during these campaigns, we're sending a monthly report that shows which specific NPI number has clicked on the ad. So if you can walk us through, because they don't have to do a form fill, right? This is a way to know that, hey, this person or this physician clicked on your ad, they went to your website, they don't have to fill out a form. So I think for most people, when I describe and explain it that way, it's kind of like the light bulb goes off and they have that aha moment to be like, what do you mean they don't have to fill out a form? Can you walk us through how that kind of works and how we're able to know which physician basically is showing the most interest?
Yeah. So this is a really interesting thing that really in a lot of other digital programs you're not able to get. But because of the way we're using data and able to match the data, you do get that feedback loop, which is really interesting. So essentially, as I was describing before, we're able to use the list to target those people. But then on the back end, when we're running programmatic display, we get data back from the service provider that tells us who was delivered that ad and where the ad was delivered. And then what we do on the back end is I'm able to use that data to then match it back to the NPI number of who that individual was. So from that standpoint, it's all anonymous, but then I do the data match again to see, oh, here's who the NPI number is. And then of course, all of the data and metrics around that NPI number that we have in the database otherwise. So it is really interesting. And that's on an impression level, right? So they just have to see the ad for them to show up in that report. And then likewise, you can also filter it to just those that clicked on the ad if you wanted to look at that. But it's not reliant on any kind of form fill or information that they provide on your website as a conversions point. We're just able to provide that back. And it provides a couple of things. One is it kind of validates that we're able to reach the audience that we said we're going to reach, right? So a lot of times that is a little bit of a black hole, right? I earlier described in the consumer world, you can select different categories of individuals with an interest group or a behavior, and you kind of just trust that that's who you're really reaching, right? And hopefully in the metrics and the conversions, the click-throughs and metrics, you're able to see, okay, yeah, this is a heightened audience or an interested audience, and so this is working. And likewise, we can do that for these campaigns, but we have another layer where we can provide, hey, here's a list of those providers. And then the cool thing with that, Jason, is that not only is it just a list, now it's somewhat actionable, right? So you can see who's interest, who's kind of raising their hand. Because one of the things we've definitely discovered in this, and we'll talk, I know, a little bit later about calls to action, getting them to take action online. In the doctor community, it's difficult for them to really take action, right? And being willing to give up their contact information. They're as a comparative audience to the general public, they're very protective of that information. And so it is really tricky. So this is a really kind of rich and useful data set to help you understand, okay, who might be more interested than maybe somebody else, and who are we reaching? And it can be really actionable for a team that's looking to kind of decide who to reach out to or where to spend their time and focus.
Perfect. And I just put up on the screen here, as you were mentioning, a lot of these data sets, like what sort of information. So like the actionable data, as you mentioned, so first name, last name, address, that's the physical address. And if they have some sort of hospital affiliation, that's really where the rubber meets the road specifically. So think about it, if you're a marketer or like a VP of sales and you're like, every month I can actually get a list to know, who saw the brand, who saw the test, who saw the solution, whatever it may be, product, right? Again, without filling out a form. So clients typically are salivating, drooling, going like, oh my gosh, okay, so we're turning those, a marketing qualified lead into an actually sales qualified lead, because we've got that data, right, to know specifically like, oh my gosh, these types of physicians, and it gives the address and that hospital affiliation. So again, very actionable. So what happens in most cases, once marketing shares that with the sales team or the VP of sales, and they start disseminating those leads, right? So a lot of action can take place, right? If you have an inside sales team, you could start calling those prospects to try to set up the meetings, right? Marketing can come in there too. But typically it's more sales focused. But at the same time, and this is kind of like the parlay into the next question that came up on that first LinkedIn Live is, Sean, right? This is the magic question. So are we able to get email addresses of these physicians, right? That comes up every single time. So let's myth bust that.
So the short answer is yes, of course. It's another data set. We can get email addresses. But I do have conversations when we're putting together these strategies with the marketers to understand how those email addresses are going to be used and setting right expectations for what those are. So the I say public, but it's not really public, but we purchase the information, right? We have a data provider that provides us with email addresses for people. So doctors are people too. So, right. So we get those back, but we are trying to keep at that professional level, right? So as valuable as a personal email might be for a doctor, more as medical marketers, we may not want to invade that space heavily, right? We want to be very careful about that. So the emails that we do match are usually at the institution level or the professional level, right? So if they're part of a medical group, then it's probably going to be a medical group domain. Or if they're part of a large hospital system, then it's probably going to be along those lines. And so then the conversation is okay, well, that's their their work email. Do doctors really read their own work email? There's a big debate there, right? Some do, some don't. The answer is yes, they do, but maybe not everyone, right? But the other part of that conversation is someone's probably reading it. And if you're trying to influence a doctor, there might be arguably some value in a PA or an NP seeing that information as well. So even if you're not through an email, in that case, getting right in front of the doctor that you're wanting to educate or have a conversation with, hey, an NP or PA might be also a good alternative to that, because they're probably part of that decision-making process, if not the decision maker, right? They're in front of patients. They know what's going on as well. So still a valuable audience, in my opinion. And email is a channel. Hey, it's another channel, right? In silo, I never recommend running campaigns or tactics in silo, because one all by itself, it's really tough to get it to really perform well. Where it performs much better is in concert with other tactics that are also happening. So they're seeing it there and here and other places that they're going to kind of validate who you are as a company or your product as a useful tool for them to use for their patient care.
So Sean, email isn't the silver bullet, the one size fits all. Come on.
Well, I wish it was. It'd make it so easy for us as marketers, right?
Right. Yeah, I think the big takeaway, omni-channel approach, right? Multiple platforms. Right. And the other thing about the reporting too, that's why I was mentioning it's more of a action item for the sales team. It's nice to have, to your point, it's another channel for email outreach. who's opening it, we don't know. But the great thing about taking an omni-channel approach, right, you're going to hit your audience up on multiple levels. And which takes me to the next in-depth question that came up during our last LinkedIn Live is, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit here too, is, hey, if I'm taking a multi-channel approach, right, we're doing display, right, that's prominent on major websites. We're doing the email, as you mentioned, sales teams doing their activity for the outreach. Hey, what about social media? Can we leverage these NPI numbers for social?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, we can. So again, it's first party data. So these platforms allow us to upload lists of individuals, and that can be done in various different ways. But using the NPI numbers, we can use or collect data that we need to upload that into those platforms for marketing purposes. So yeah, we absolutely can. We can build up those audiences in the same way on those platforms. The only downside to that is, unlike programmatic display marketing, where we get a lot of the data back from the platform that runs the ads, like I was explaining, on those platforms. So when we're talking social media, we're really talking Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I know the medical audience is on Twitter as well. I hear that a lot and see it. But to date, I can't say a lot for the Twitter promoted posting platform. Today, it's really not set up very well to promote paid advertising on there. It's really more of an organic platform today. We'll see what decisions they make in the future, but that's kind of where it is today. We have attempted a few different things, but I haven't seen a lot of success there yet. So TBD in the future, but social media being Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and on those platforms we can upload those. But as I was explaining, those I don't get the data back. So unless they convert in some way or raise their hand, unfortunately, I'm not able to provide that same list of, here are all the doctors or NPIs that saw your ad and clicked on it. It does rely then on some kind of conversion through those platforms. So you can build native conversion and landing pages and forms, or on your website, of course.
Yeah, great. And so, as I mentioned earlier, what we're going to do is, this is a two-part series. So we were kind of starting to go down the rabbit hole a little bit about KPIs, right? Conversions, those sorts of things. So during our next session, we're definitely going to talk more about those KPIs, tracking, setting those things up essentially. Sean, for social media, I know you mentioned Twitter, or now obviously it's X. And I know that came up because it's interesting. Like when I go to these major conferences like AACR or ASCO, like on that Twitter board, most of it's like medical oncologists are like the number one influencer. Right. So I know it sounds like we're trying to get our heads wrapped around Twitter a little bit more. I know obviously X now, I keep on saying Twitter. I can't get that out of my head, but and I think they're going through a lot of different internal changes. I know we're doing some things on Twitter for just an agency perspective, and it's hard to get some of the metrics for X now. So what you're saying, mainly the social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and obviously LinkedIn, those are the three main platforms.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also keep in mind when you're talking about running like a promoted post or an ad on there, those platforms do have minimum spends as well. So we have a little bit more flexibility in the display arena, but on those platforms, they are requiring minimum. So, I mean, and there are several $1,000s minimum a month that need to be spent in order to run ads to those audiences. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And as marketers, as HCP marketers, I mean, I think we're always thinking omni-channel approach, right? So we're thinking, anything socially. But I know we've had a couple conversations come up with clients too that their device or their solution or their test, it's just it may not be something that they want to broadcast on social media directly. So obviously, we're not saying you have to do social media, but from a marketer's perspective and taking that omni-channel approach, right? It's good to have social in the mix, right? So you can take the multi-channel approach. And then This kind of leads to the next question, unless you wanted to mention something else there,
Yeah,
Sean.
yeah. So this is an ongoing conversation that I've had with marketers as well, because social media, especially Facebook, right, is kind of more of that personal life kind of platform, right? Like you're going on there to check out what your kids are doing, or what what's the latest that's going on with your friends, or that kind of thing. So it's a social network, right? And LinkedIn is probably more at a professional level, right? So it's around your career, it's around your skills, and more professional topics. So it kind of aligns a little bit better, perhaps, with the fact that we're B2B marketers, right? We're trying to attract these doctors on a professional level. That being said, so you have to keep that in mind, but they are there, right? And sometimes it's an adaptation of what that message looks like and what that message is. So maybe it's not the same message that you're running in a display ad, where where it's clearly an advertisement, perhaps, but on those platforms it could be a little bit softer, or we've seen anything from like patient stories or experiences, kind of more storytelling type bits. We've also seen a lot of our clients do, if they're doing like you mentioned earlier, the oncology conferences coming up, like ASCO and AACR, putting up short clips from those presentations, especially if you're running a sponsorship for one of those theaters. I don't have to tell you how expensive that is. And so getting more out of that, and maybe using a clip from that presentation and posting that on social and promoting it to your audience could be a really great effort to try with your audience, to see if you can get the engagement and interest there. So sometimes it is just a matter of adaptation of how you're putting your message out there, and catering it to the audience and kind of where they might be in their mindset when they're on those kinds of platforms.
Got it. So it sounds like it's a lot of collaboration, trying to understand, because,
Yeah.
not necessarily understand, but just to try to figure out, is social a good fit or not, right?
Right.
You got to look at the messaging, you got to look at the audience, and then you also got to look at what other tactics that they're doing, right? What other things are in the mix? Does it make sense or not? So,
Exactly.
and that's the beautiful thing about digital, right? There's things that you can turn on and off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a new product launch, and we're going to get into some of these, like how would you leverage these sort of digital campaigns, but it really just depends essentially, what your initiatives are, what your campaigns are. So there's definitely a lot of deep discussions that I know you're typically on with clients.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, one other thing I'll just add real quick, Jason, if you're okay with it.
Do it.
So, when I'm talking to someone that says, hey, my audience isn't there, or I don't want to be there, the audience is there, right? And maybe not your whole, like everyone in your audience is all there, but they are there, right? We know they are. And from our own behavior, we know that we're there. So my recommendation is try it, right? In marketing in general, this is a scientific experiment, right? And just because XYZ formula worked for somebody else doesn't mean that it's going to work for your audience and your situation. This is precision. How's this? Precision marketing. How's that? I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know how that will go over, but anyway, just because it worked for another audience doesn't mean it's going to work for your audience and for your message, right? And so this is a little bit of a trial and error. And we can come to the table with recommendations and best practices, ideas, and some guidance. But at the end of the day, you start somewhere, you create a benchmark, and then you work against that, right? Or with that, maybe not against it, but with it, right? And see if you can improve it, and see what does improvement, and kind of figure out, what is the right mix, what seems to be working and resonating with your specific audience. And that's how you really become a savvy marketer.
Yeah, agree 1,000%. I think it's always testing, learning, and then optimizing, right? That's typically what we're doing. And then specific. So if I'm an HCP marketer, I'm listening to this and I'm trying to figure out, like, from a buyer's journey perspective or from a marketing funnel perspective, how does this display programmatic? Where does this fall, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. So in display, it's an awareness tactic. It's top of mind, it's top of funnel for a buyer's journey, right? So it's a great way to brand. Think of it like a billboard, right? These are ads that are reaching them where they are, right? So as we discussed, these are lifestyle sites, so they might be searching for news, they might be checking their email, they may be checking stock prices, or it's the sports scores, all sorts of things that these ads will come up. And because of that, because they're not doing the searching for us, we're reaching them where they are. These are billboards, right? These are on the sideline. They're not the main feature or the main topic of what's going on. So it's less expensive type of marketing because of that, because it's impression based marketing. But it's it's top of funnel. And what that means is that if you're really looking for that conversion and for somebody to take action, it means that you've got to fill your funnel at every stage, right? So display is one tactic that fills the top of the funnel and reaches kind of a broader audience, or an audience that may not be aware of what you offer or educated in what you're offering for their patients, right? And so bringing it down with some additional tactics like social is more kind of mid funnel. It's still kind of in that awareness level, but what we're seeing is the reaction is a little bit more mid funnel. To a lower funnel type tactic like paid search is one of the lowest funnel kind of conversion metrics, because that's when they are searching for an answer, right? And so we just want to be there when they are searching for a solution to a situation or an education piece that they're looking to learn about. So the concept, omni-channel, build up your funnel with the tactics that make sense for your audience all the way through.
Great. I like the example that you gave. It's almost like a billboard or a TV ad, right? And so what typically happens is you get the frequency up, you get the brand recognition, right? All of a sudden that HCP is finally like, hey, they may not click on the ad, but they may drive them to Google. So in the next session, we're going to get even, more nerdier, or same level of nerdiness, where we're going to talk about KPIs and tracking those sorts of things. So I want to pivot to the last two questions, just recognizing the time.
Sure.
I ran through some of the websites, so we may not have to do a deep dive on this, Sean, but what are some of the typical websites that these display ads run on? And is it just one of the questions that came up that we want to address? And is it only on mobile phones?
Yeah. So it's not just mobile, but a mobile is certainly a part of that mix. But the websites are things like, foxnews.com, USA Today, CNN, those types of things. On the sports side, it's like ESPN, and I'm not a big sports guru like you are, Jason, but other sports related websites, as well as things like Yahoo and AOL and other news sites. And there's regional news sites and national news sites that offer this advertising, as well as blog content as well. So there's lots of ad inventory out there. And just to mention, so we also have a filtering of the locations in which we place our ads. So we want to keep that brand pristine, right? And so we don't want to run in places where you would not want your brand to be seen, perhaps. And so we do have a filter on there of acceptable sites, because there are millions of sites and lots of inventory out there that lots of websites that want to generate revenue through advertising, but we want to make sure that we're doing the best for our clients as well, to deliver not only to our audience but also in a responsible way. And that could be on a tablet, on a mobile device, on a laptop or desktop computer. And we can also optimize based on what we're seeing from our audience. So if we're seeing that our particular audience is engaging more often on a mobile device, hey, we can shift the budget to basically spend more there, so that we can boost those metrics, just like any other KPI that we'll go into, like you mentioned in another webinar. But we can use that actually as an optimization point based on where our audience happens to be more often and engage more often.
Awesome. And then Sean, so I think you mentioned this, but just want to clarify. So can a client give us a list saying like, hey, we don't want to run on these 100 websites? Like, is that an option? Can we do something like that?
Yeah, we can exclude sites, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's not super common to do that, I don't think, but yeah, if you had particular ones that you didn't want to for one reason or another, yeah, we can add that to a list, because basically we have a white list that we've built over time, and so based on a particular campaign, we could certainly modify that.
Okay. Last question. I think we probably should have led with this maybe, but it's still a good last question. And for those people that are still watching, again, this is a two-part series. What we're going to do is we're going to set up the next one. We'll give you a date and time because there's just so much to unpack here. And I know we've gone through a lot, but specifically for the last question, Sean. So if I'm an HCP marketer and I've got some product launches, I've got some major initiatives at, conferences and non-conferences for the rest of this year. Like, what are some good campaigns that should be thinking about leveraging NPI numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, anytime's a good time to market, in my opinion, because I'm a marketer. But yes, there are certain times that might make even more sense to start a campaign like this. And it's some of the things that you mentioned, like a product launch. If you've got a new product or an alteration to an existing product that people may be, already aware of, but now it's improved or changed or has new indication. Those are great opportunities to start that kind of awareness and information. Webinars have been a really great and interesting way to leverage this type of kind of quick response uh, list as well. It definitely is a great way to elevate and educate your audience through webinars. So we've seen it used for that. Any kind of new data that's coming out. So if you've got, a research paper or release that, has been accepted at a conference, those are always great opportunities to promote those. If you have a new territory or area, so we didn't talk much about this, but you certainly can filter any of this by geography, right? So all of these practices are within a specific geographic area. So that also is an interesting way where if you're trying to open up into a particular market or market to a particular area where you have new sales folks or maybe trying to assist your sales folks in getting in the door more, that's a great opportunity. And then as we mentioned in the last webinar is conferences. We've talked about ACA, ACR, and many other conferences. So we can use the NPI database to kind of warm them up to anything that might be happening at the conference, remind them about your brand so that when they see you when they're at the conference, they definitely recognize you and maybe even have reason to start a conversation with you, right? Like prime the pump a little bit, get it going so it's not so cold. So we've definitely seen it that way. And we didn't really talk about in this one, although we did in the previous webinar about geofencing conferences as well. So yet another digital tactic that could be utilized at conferences, but also another area or way that we could use HCP targeting data.
Awesome, Sean. Well, I think we're at time here. So I just wanted to give a quick wrap. I mean, hopefully, the marketers that are watching this, hopefully their wheels are spinning and right. And most marketers that we're talking with have sort of, to your point, product launches, abstract posters, data that's always coming out. And they're always trying to, figure out, hey, what's that omni-channel approach? So hopefully this is one piece of the pie, the marketing pie that will help, as we went through this myth bust, a lot of the questions that we got from the first one. So the second one, just to tee it up real quick here, we're going to talk ad report. We're going to show an actual live ad report, what that looks like based on the NPI reporting. So there's two types of reports, right? There's an ad campaign report, and then there's a NPI number report. So we're going to talk about that. In the next session, we're going to talk more about tracking conversions and how you can set this up. And that's really it at a high level. For those that have attended, hopefully this is helpful. So as you plan out your initiatives, your strategies for this year and hopefully beyond, hopefully this has been helpful and impactful. And if there's any other questions, feel free to hit myself up or Sean, AKA the data guy, through his LinkedIn or my LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So I think, Sean, anything else you want to mention before we wrap here?
No, this is great. Thanks so much for putting this together, Jason. It's always fun to talk about this, and hopefully, like you said, it's helpful. I mean, this is fun for us. Like I said, bringing together data is something I did many years ago when I first started in marketing. So it's really fun to kind of see this come full circle. And, with our passion in kind of this biotech space or life science space, it's really, it's great to be a part of this. And hopefully it results in betterment of patient care, because at the end of the day, we're all patients. And so, yeah, that will be great. So thanks again, Jason, for bringing us together.
It's great nerding out with you, and look forward to the next session.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Bye for now.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.